As you know, we have done about 315 webinars so far. We have had the privilege of 6 Nobel laureates join us. We have done under the presidency of G20, we did 11 on new international economic order, and we did on climate and women empowerment. Since we started in October 2018, our objective has been research-based policy advice. Once we were in the midst of COVID, we realized that we will have to move from the hard copy research-based policy advice to probably convene webinars wherein we bring the best minds across the world and think about global and domestic issues. We have been very lucky, feel very proud to share that in these webinars which we have done so far, we have had excellent participation of the speakers, the best minds which you can think from across the world, from Indian universities and abroad, and as I mentioned, 6 Nobel laureates, and people who are in the forefront of policy making and decision taking. Today, we are in a very different situation. Since the last 1 year, we have done 6 webinars on Trump tariffs. On tariffs, the world has really seen a very turbulent year. The last 12 months have been extremely different and unique. This week, something very, very worrying happened. While we were happy that the country is signing agreements and treaties and that will ensure smooth growth projections, country which has launched Viksit Bharat, suddenly we find that there is in our Middle East huge issues have settled. These issues have implications for all of us. For a country which is chasing a dream of Viksit Bharat, any disturbance in the neighborhood is obviously a cause of worry. To understand in depth what all these issues are, we are today here to discuss about the Middle East and the Indian economy by the experts. We are very fortunate that Professor Dr. Ambassador Dr. Ausaf Sayeed agreed to chair the session. Professor Kondapalli has been coming and talking to us earlier, and he is also joining us today, but he is China expert. General Rajeshwar, who has also been with us many times and is our expert, also was available. And Professor Ashwini Mohapatra from GNU also agreed to join us. Let me briefly introduce the 4 speakers, both well known in their own rights. Ambassador Ausaf Sayeed is coming and joining us for the first time. He is a former secretary to the Government of India in the Ministry of External Affairs and former ambassador of India to Saudi Arabia and Yemen and its High Commissioner to Seklis. He is the member of the 1989 batch of the Indian Foreign Service. Of the 34 years illustrious career that he has had, 18 years of his career was spent in the Middle East. And I thought with that vast experience, he can guide us. He has handled India's political and economic relations with all the Gulf and West Asia and North African countries. He is widely recognized as a strategic thinker who focuses on fostering business development between India and the Middle East. His efforts were instrumental in transforming India's relations with Saudi Arabia and other West Asian countries promoting trade, investment, and joint ventures, while fostering closer security and defense ties. Our second speaker, Professor Ashwini, who's joining us for the first time, is a professor at Center for West Asian Studies, JNU. In the faculty of the School of International Studies, Professor Ashwini is a standing teacher with over 30 years of teaching and research experience. He has successfully guided research work of 75 PhD and MPhil scholars, in addition to self-authored book Foreign Policy of Turkey, Continuity and Change, and edited volume titled Revisiting High Valley Connection in Northeast India by Macmillan. He has published a number of research articles in refereed journals, edited volumes, periodicals, and in the leading newspapers of the country. General Rajeshwar has been with us a number of times. He was commissioned into the Regiment of Artillery in December 1980, a gunner and aviator. He is an alumnus of the Defense Services Staff College, Army War College, and National Defense Colleges in Delhi and Philippines. He has actively taken part in Operation Meghdoot and Operation Rakshak. He commanded a medium regiment in Operation Prakram, an infantry brigade on the line of control, a counter-insurgency force in VNK, and a corps in the desert sector. He has served on 3 staff assignments in United Nations peacekeeping missions in Mozambique and Rwanda. His epith responsibilities, both prior service, included the Chief of Integrated Defense Staff to the Chairman Chiefs of Staff Committee and the Commander-in-Chief of the Andaman and Nicobar Command, from where he retired in May 2020. Our last speaker for the day, Professor Kondapalli, is an honorary fellow of the Institute of Chinese Studies and professor in Chinese Studies in JNU. He has been with us earlier. He is currently chairperson of Center for East Asian Studies, School of International Studies, JNU, and research associate at Center for Chinese Studies in the University of Stellenbosch, South Africa. He has served at Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis, New Delhi, for nearly 12 years. He is educated in Chinese Studies in India and China with a specialization in modern Chinese history in Master of Arts at Osmania University at Hyderabad, Master of Philosophy and Doctor of Philosophy in 89 and 95 respectively in Chinese Studies Division of School of International Studies, JNU. With this, I hand over the session to Ambassador Dr. Ausaf Sayeed to take the proceedings further. Over to you, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Dr. Charan Singh ji. Welcome to my fellow panelists today, Lieutenant General P.S. Rajeshwar, Professor Ashwini Mohapatra, and Professor Srikanth Kondapalli, and all the other participants who have joined. First of all, it's my great pleasure to join today with EGROW, the Foundation for Economic Growth and Welfare. This is my first time, as was mentioned. And I say this is a very topical and timely webinar which is being organized. As we know that we are facing a war at our doorsteps, and the war which may have significant implications, for our both political and economic, development of India. But before we discuss all these aspects, if we focus on the subject, that means how is Middle East and Indian economy related? First and foremost, I would like to mention to you that we do have civilizational contacts between the two regions. The Indus Valley civilization had contacts with Egyptian civilization and many other civilizations so far. But coming to the modern times, the Middle East, or West Asia as we prefer to call it in India, it holds a very immense strategic importance for us due to economic, geopolitical, and cultural ties. The region is very vital for our energy security, and it supplies a significant portion of our crude oil and gas needs. And this dependency makes stability in the region very critical for our economic performance and inflation control. Besides this, of course, the Middle East is also a key trading partner with bilateral trade between India and the Gulf Cooperation Council, approximately $195 billion during the last financial year. And very significantly, the region is also home to more than 9 million Indians who are remitting approximately about $40 billion to contributing to Indian economy every year. Besides these, of course, we also have our major connectivity projects conceived through this region. One is the Chabahar, another is the International North-South Trading Corridor, INSTC, and the IMEC, India-Middle East Economic Corridor, which we had conceived during India's presidency of the G20. More important are our political relations, which have evolved, and also economic relations, which have evolved from merely transactional relationship centering around energy security and diaspora to a very comprehensive, strategic partnerships. You must be well aware that India had established strategic partnerships with several countries in the region, more particularly UAE, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar, and Egypt. And more recently, of course, we have also upgraded our strategic partnership with Israel in the recent visit of our Prime Minister. All these countries regard also India in a very affectionate manner. They have been supportive, but of course, there also has been challenges in any kind of relationship which we have. But having said that, we do have a very robust mechanism of dialogue with all these countries in the form of India GCC political dialogue, and then also in the form of India League of Arab States dialogue. So if you ask me, I will say that there are 7 pillars, of our economic cooperation with West Asia. And if I list them out, one would be the trade and economic cooperation. Second would be investments. Third would be energy security. Fourth would be food security, more for the West Asian countries than us. Diaspora relations, fifth. And sixth is security and defense cooperation. And lastly, connectivity. So if I briefly just touch upon 2 main aspects, one is the trade and economic cooperation, and another is energy security. One, in terms of trade and economic cooperation, our India's trade with GCC, I mentioned to you, it was 195 billion the last financial year. But if you also take it to the entire West Asia, you're also including in that countries in the WANA region, West Asia, North Africa region, or in some parlance, they also call it as MENA region, then our trade exceeds $280 billion, So this is a very significant trade which is there. So which actually makes the GCC as the largest trading partner bloc of India. Next to it comes European Union with approximately 150 billion and ASEAN with 135 billion. So this gives us the significance of these, the bloc itself. And within the bloc, of course, we do have UAE, which itself takes about 100 billion, dollars of trade, followed by Saudi Arabia, which is 42 billion. Then the important aspect again in our economic relationship is the free trade agreements which we have signed with both with UAE, which is the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, which was signed in 22, and then of course more recently, which we have a similar agreement which we have signed with Oman, which was signed in December 2025. These 2 agreements have provided greater access to Indian goods and made our economy more robust. Then talking about investments a bit before we discuss the current implications, the foreign direct investment inflows from these countries are in the range of about $47 billion to India, which is quite significant. And spans across various sectors. And more importantly, there have been announcements of big ticket investments from at least two countries, which is Saudi Arabia and UAE, and where Saudi Arabia has promised investments of about $100 billion. And similarly, UAE has also promised $75 billion of investment. These are into various stages of implementation which are there. So now from that to the energy security, we do have implications on energy security from the recent unfortunate developments which was talked about by Dr. Charan Singh in his introduction. Any escalation in oil prices by 9 to 10% would actually widen India's current account deficit by about 0.4%. For every 10% increase in oil prices, currently it has surged to about $84 billion. India would add roughly about 9 billion to its deficit. So this could elevate fuel, transportation, logistic costs, contributing to higher inflation and impacting sectors such as agriculture through increased diesel prices and all those things. Plus also the fact that our diaspora will become vulnerable, and we have to factor possible evacuation and many other disturbances. And more importantly, India must also navigate its strategic partnerships on the one hand with United States and Israel, while maintaining relations with Iran, particularly concerning Chabahar port and our access to Central Asia. So we are actually treating very cautiously in this current situation. There are tremendous opportunities which are available to India in this region in terms of reconstruction in Gaza, in possible reconstruction in future in Yemen, and many other things. But at the same time, we also have a lot of things at stake because the war has come to our doorstep. We have seen an Iranian ship which had participated in our naval exercises in Milan had been torpedoed by US in our backyards, and that itself is not a good sign for India as an emerging naval power. So these are the food for thought for the speakers. I will leave. If Professor Ashwini Mohapatra is already joined, then I would perhaps invite him to share his views in his intervention, and then we can take the conversation forward with other speakers. Professor Ashwini. You are on mute, Professor. You are on mute.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me here. And I just wanted to hear from others before I start. But you made me the first speaker to introduce that. Already you had the introduction of the theme. I'm not an economist, first of all. If you're expecting some statistics and the interpretation of the data and statistics for me, in the backdrop of the developments in West Asia, so I'm not the kind of person that who could highlight or who could elaborate on the things that you presented. I'm basically a student of international politics and West Asian studies. I can very briefly tell you exactly what is happening and the likely scenario in West Asia and its impact on India, as all of you know, as an ascendant power. To begin with, West Asia has been also a conflict-prone zone for a variety of reasons. So what you're witnessing today is nothing new. Ever since I started my uh, academic career way back in 1980s, it's nearly 40 years now, and I have seen the periodic flare of violence, overthrow of regime, uh, initially secular kind of terrorism and replaced by a religious terrorism. Also it has remained a major site of bloody conflicts, resulting in internal displacement, killing of number of people, millions of people in a way, degrading them socially, otherwise. And whenever I travel across West Asia, right from Lebanon to Jordan to the Gulf countries, sometimes I feel pity for these people, because if you travel, say, kilometers, you hardly come across a soul, a human being on the road. So it's a lovely landscape. And until recently, until 1980s, one country called Lebanon was known as the Switzerland of West Asia. So you get the latest, fashionable item in Lebanon. But what happened in the 15 years of the civil war? Till date, Lebanon is considered a precarious republic. Recent developments, particularly the Israeli invasion and its implication on the country, show how vulnerable the country like Lebanon is. Similarly, prior to that, you had a problem in Syria, you had a bloody civil war for a longer time, and the country is practically devastated. Now the new group is trying hard to patch up things and to restore a semblance of stability and the political system in Damascus. Then prior to that, you had the problem in Iraq, right from the unilateral American invasion of Iraq in 2003, and its gradual, withdrawal from Iraq culminated in 2011. The whole country was, in tatters. Then you prior to that, you had problem in, the war between Iran and Iraq for long 8 years, and that definitely affected our economy. In India in many ways went on for 8 long years, the longest war in history in last, say, since the end of the World War II. So you have seen the conflict of all types, interstate and intrastate conflicts. You have seen the regime collapsing, state becoming, quite vulnerable, weak. And then you talk about the instead of regime change, you talk about the state building, post-conflict state building. You have all kinds of conflicts. Where, as a student of West Asian politics, normally I classify them three categories. You have the interstate, intrastate, and regional conflict. At the core of the regional conflict, you have the existence of Israel, which the majority, countries of West Asia until recently never accepted Israel as a normal entity so far the region is concerned, normal or natural. So Israel also tried, Israel was seen as a naturalized, like you have the two kinds of citizenship, natural and naturalized. So it was seen as a kind of, uh, you know, uh, naturalized entity, sovereign entity existing in West Asia. So that become a kind of center, or become the point of all kinds of conflict in the region. Even today, many consider that until unless the core issue of West Asia, that is the right to self-determination with the Palestinians, is resolved, the conflict of all kinds will continue to, recur. So in a way, this conflict, the current conflict in Iran, is not an addition, it's a kind of culmination of all that conflict that I mentioned very briefly, to whether it is interstate, intrastate, or regional conflict. Why I consider it a culmination, because the whole controversial nuclear program of Iran, to the best of my understanding, has been nothing but a kind of pretext excuse for United States of America, particularly President Trump administration, to eliminate the ultimate source of so-called security threat to Israel. Okay, so once you have the collapse of the regime, so you have a new system emerging, most likely led by the former king, who was ousted way back in 1979, his son Raja Pahlavi. So you have a friendly country where there will be no threat emanating from particularly a Muslim majority country like Iran, so far the existence of Israel is considered. Hence, Israel always describes Iran since 1979 as an existential threat. So that's perhaps Prime Minister Netanyahu never had that kind of golden opportunity of, you know, uh, neutralizing what they considered the enduring source of threat to Israeli security, because Israel is by and large suffer from, I often describe it as a siege mentality. So this way, the siege mentality basically would drip in further whenever there is a severe or a deeper threat perception of among the Israelis from the region. That is very much reflected in the disproportionate use of violence by the Israeli state, whether it is against the non-state actors or the state actors engaged in any kind of bloody conflict with Israel. So thereby, the Iranian regime, after the 8 long year war with Iraq, you'll find that how it began to recover itself and consolidate its power in Tehran, and in the name of religion Islam, or the Shiite version of Islam, and how they try to strengthen the control, overwhelming control over the people, and through this indoctrination of their own state ideology, they try to secure the loyalty of the people. But this loyalty began to, begin to show the sign of rupture sometime in the mid 90s onwards. So the people gradually were getting disenchanted with the what they call oppressive, corrupt Islamic regime in Tehran. So that was well reflected in the periodic popular protest in Iran, at least four of them, which was a major protest in Iran, including the recent protest by the Israeli women over the issue of hijab. So thereby that shows the creeping legitimacy crisis the regime was encountering since the mid 1990s. And to divert the attention of people, the Iranian leadership had to, pursue what they call the typical regional leadership role in West Asia. And again, in the name of its engagement with what they call Israel, the cancerous gland to be removed from the body. Okay, and that is a typical description of Israel by the Iranian leadership. And they try to portray this entire struggle as the struggle of the Muslim world, and Iran basically leading from the front. So they try to propagate their kind of revolution as an example or as a model to be emulated by the countries in the Gulf or maybe in the larger Muslim world. So is a claiming as a leader. This, to cut the story short, culminated in 2023. If you see the development between 2022 and 23, you had the sign of what I call the American strategic retrenchment with West Asia, or the kind of hegemonic retreat from West Asia, particularly under the Democratic administration, and that created a kind of power vacuum in West Asia, and that power vacuum, in a way, enabled the Iranian, the clerical regime to become more assertive, and that is well reflected in the constant support they gave to their proxies and agents in regions like Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, and in southern Iraq. So new groups joining the network created by Iran. And Iran was increasingly involved in the regional politics, and so much so the battles were fought in a country like Yemen between Saudi, representing the Sunnis, and Iran, the rest. And ultimately, you had a kind of fair victory for Iran, and that was well reflected in the peace deal which was occurred with the mediation of China in 2022. So then there is a time how the Iranian involvement led to what I call the survival of Assad regime in Damascus. And ultimately, President Damascus subsequently overthrown, he was admitted back into the Arab League, 22-member Arab League of West Asia. So these are some of these major achievements made by the Iranian authority, and that's become a new source of legitimacy for the clerical regime in Tehran. So why I mention it? I mention it specifically in the context of 7th October 2023. The brutal attack on the Israeli civilians in Gaza is a historic turning point. Then the things begin to change. Apart from the Israeli use of the disproportionate force in Gaza to completely obliterate whatever sign of protest in Gaza put up by the Hamas, so they also extended this the war into the region by taking on the putative protector and the progenitor, supporter, inspirer, that is Iran. So Iran for Israel became the new potential new potent security threat that need to be dealt with. It is not the case of what you see in terms of real politics, is a competition between the two regional actors to maximize the influence. No, here basically Israel is trying to fight for their own defense, security defense. That led to the direct confrontation between Israel and Iran. And if you recall, the Israelis aerial bombardment inside Iran in 23, sorry, in 2024, 25, the 12-day war with Iran. So this whatever is happening today is well predictable. Why? Because that is a part of, that's my speculation, part of the Israelis' long-term strategy to remove this regime, because they would not get such an opportune moment or the occasion at a time when there is a popular protest, and protest inside Iran involving not only the younger Iranians, even a substantial portion of the Bajaris or the merchant class of Iran. And remember, the merchant and the Bajaris of Iran has been an influential component of Iranian society, and there are tremendous contributions to the anti-Shah movement way back in 1979. So part of that mercantile class joined the aggrieved, infuriated, rebellious, the Iranian youth, because they wanted more freedom. They simply were opposed to all kinds of religious restriction on the activities, on their dream, on their aspirations. So that's basically happened in the wake of the deterioration of economy and certain hike in the price of the common commodities. So all that, in a way, stopped that whole movement inside Iran, thereby providing a new opportunity on the platter of Israelis. So look at the coincidence, internal unrest, and coinciding with the Israelis dismantling a large part of the command and control structure of Iranian military last year in the 12-day war. That apart, number three, that the setback to the Iranian strategic and the regional leadership role aspiration in West Asia by taking on Hamas, by eliminating the top leadership, including Nasrallah of Hezbollah, and attacking some of the bases even in Iraq. So there's a way all this together show that's a part of Prime Minister Netanyahu's strategy, not only to emasculate the clerical regime in Iran and the Iranian leadership, even to take it on them, and when they're totally weak, at a time when they're facing a serious legitimacy crisis internally and losing externally, or losing in the sense rollback of Iranian regional influence. It never happened before 2023. So what I'm trying to tell you here, these are the three major factors to be taken into account, or what I call is interplay of this internal external factors, which should account for whatever is happening today. It finally, it may not end up, it may not, I'm saying it may not end up with the outright victory of Israel America. I also can foresee you may not ultimately end up with the typical regime change as it happened in Iraq in way back in 2003, or for them in Afghanistan. But definitely, this clerical regime would, for all practical purposes, would be losing all kinds of hold over the people, and and I will not rule out the possibility of the ultimate collapse of the the Islamic Republic in just a matter of few days. But then what follows afterwards, very difficult to predict. That still exists in realm of speculation, because we have seen number of people regime experiment across the world, whether it was Afghanistan, Iraq, or in any Latin American country before. So it's extremely difficult to predict what course it would take subsequently. But I do foresee a chaotic, violent transition in Iran, thereby destabilizing the entire region. And this instability or destabilization may persist for some time. Given this geostrategic significance of Iran, and remember, Iran is the only natural state in West Asia. Even it could be described like India and China as a civilization state. And this country ultimately may resolve its dilemma in terms of its identity, reflected in the division between the ideological division inside Iran, what is called Iraniyat and Islamiyat. Iranian basically refers to pre-Islamic Persian identity. So this way, which direction it will go becomes extremely difficult for whichever regime comes, whichever transitional regime is ultimately put in place or installed in Tehran. There would be definitely conflict because the people who have been enjoyed power and position until yesterday, they would not simply melt away. They definitely would continue wherever they are to put up resistance to whatever form of government or whatever form of political system emerges in Tehran. So we are in for more trouble in Iran, and that may take some time to settle down. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Ashwini Mohapatra, for those very valuable comments. Now, let me move to Lieutenant General P.S. Rajeshwar. Now, as we all know that India's military diplomacy in the Middle East has reflected a strategic transformation from a passive role to a very proactive force that shapes regional security and stability. The shift is driven by the need to safeguard our energy imports, secure trade routes, protect its large diaspora, and counter the rising influence of China. So, unlike its earlier approach, India now embraces multi-dimensional security partnerships, leveraging cultural ties, economic strength, and strategic neutrality. So, I would request General P.S. Rajeshwar to throw light on the evolving security and defense doctrine of India in the Middle East, and also what kind of challenges are we facing in the region. We have all heard about the Islamic NATO, the so-called Islamic NATO, which some countries have talked about. This has caused, it's a matter of concern for us. What could be the regional approach to such a grouping which comes in? Some people have also talked about a Muslim Quad with the possibility of Bangladesh also joining. All these are matters of speculation because no such organization has actually been formed, but there is a talk on this. So to dwell on all these security and defense related aspects and implication on India, and particularly in the light of the current developments, I would like to invite Lieutenant General P.S. Rajeshwar. Over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair, Dr. Ambassador Dr. Ausaf, and Professors Mohapatra and Professor Kondapalli. It's with a sense of deja vu I know that once in EGROW in 2022, we started, I think, within about a week of the Russia-Ukraine war. And the biggest question at that time, I think, Dr. Charan, you'll recall, was how long, General, will it last? And I didn't have an answer then to that. Neither do I have an answer now to that, I'm saying, to Russia-Ukraine war. But cutting into this situation in the Middle East, I've had the fortune as DG for Center for Land Warfare to interact with the Israelis, the Iranians, the Saudis, Omanis, UAE, and many countries which used to come for, having a dialogue with us. So each country actually out there is kind of structured very differently as far as security needs is concerned. This is one. But coming back to the basics of the war which is fought, there's a need to understand what has happened. And only then we can see, okay, what from war and security can happen. So as we were aware, the talks in Geneva failed in February between US and Iran, which was to limit Iran's nuclear activities and relax US sanctions. And on February 28th, the US Department of War launched Operation Epic Fury. And the campaign commenced with the death of the Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei. What we came to know at that time, that it was aimed at achieving 4 primary political and strategic objectives: facilitating regime change through the Iranian people, denying Iran nuclear weapons, destroying its missile and production capabilities, and dismantling the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. These were the stated aims. Of course, today is the 7th day. These aims themselves often have been either revised or kind of reviewed. So we are at the moment, it's not very clear as to whether these 4 aims which were started on day one, stated on day one, continue to be the aims, because this has an implication. And because since we are, war has actually disrupted what we were doing before the war in the Middle East. So how did it actually happen? The Americans and the Israelis, they operated from the south and the north and took out command and control, air defense, and all proliferation, which is missile storage and naval vessels. And they did target. They wanted to achieve air superiority. They wanted to destroy not only this, the military infrastructure, but also strategic infrastructure. In fact, just about an hour back, I was listening to Brad Cooper, who's the admiral for CENTCOM, and he said our goal is also to hit their strategic infrastructure. And of course, there was cyber warfare in the sense that a lot of messages came up on the Iranian apps as to the people should join when they can. And there is, of course, a lot of element of social control with checkposts and all, so that people don't actually spill over. But a lot of key infrastructure in Iran has been hit. Airfields like Tehran and Bushehr, ports, which is Bandar Abbas and Konark, nuclear sites, which is Natanz. And this is a follow-up to the photo of in the 12-day war, which happened last year. Obviously, that was only partial, therefore they had to revisit it. Then missile sites at Tabriz and Kermanshah. So the characteristics of what has happened from a superpower plus a regional power, US and Israel, of their campaign has been intelligence domination, which has led to precision strikes. And in defense, at least for Israel, there is a ballistic missile defense in place. What is not in place, perhaps, is for the rest of the Gulf, and that is an issue which has caused casualties on in the entire UAE and many other places. Also, the US forces have reportedly sunk 9 to 17 Iranian naval vessels. Key losses have happened to the Iranian Navy and frigates, close to the Hormuz, Strait of Hormuz, and even one just south of Sri Lanka, about 22 nautical miles, which is Iris Dana. That signified to us that the war has actually come home. So it's easy to, kind of work things till the point you don't get involved. But my sense is, whenever any conflict happens, it is a tightrope walking that you are ending up to do. And therefore, in a situation where we are the net security provider, or at least believe we can be, this is a situation which is a little bit of a setback. As far as the Iranians are concerned, it's important to see that they have already put in motion a temporary leadership council, and they will select the successor to Ayatollah Khamenei. A lot of people are talking of Mujtaba Khamenei. So at the higher level, this is their leadership. But fundamentally, like even Professor Mohapatra must have appears to have stated, Iran also feels that it has an existential threat. And therefore, they have invoked something which I would call internationalizing the battlefield, which means they are not only regionalizing it, they are also putting it wherever anybody else is also getting hurt. So that is happening. Then you are seeing, one of the major things was that after the June 2025, punishment that they got in the 12-day war, they have done something very interesting for military watchers, that they have had a centralized command, but in the absence or in the decapitation of the centralized command, they have already planned out that the control will now devolve onto local commanders who will carry out retaliatory strikes. So they had a plan, they had a strategy, and this is how it is happening, even though a lot of their senior commanders have been knocked off. So this is a very interesting development militarily. This also for future warfare experts makes a difference. And this also portends to the fact that this war is going to stretch, right? Who all have been hit? All the US bases in and around in the region, which Iran had always threatened, and that is why you had a level of deterrence, they have been struck. What is the degree of striking? This other phenomena is the information war is so dense on both sides that if you watch on the Twitter and the YouTube, you will see all kind of information. So it's very difficult to discern. The proxies, that is Hezbollah of Lebanon, have also raised their head, and the Iraqi militia. And Israel is doing whatever it needs to do, is what we understand. Now, is the bigger thing is maritime disruption. Don't look at the air and the land war alone. Look at the maritime disruption, because it feeds into the economy, and it like the chair brought out, it actually is a spoiler into our trade and movement and all things that we do in peace. So the IRGC had warned that no ships would be allowed to pass. I was just looking at a French channel just now, and it says that it has no, it's not only a trickle in the, which was it had dropped by 70% in the first 48 hours. It has now actually, there's hardly any traffic which is going. Apparently, China and Russia are exceptions. But if you look at the strait, which is just 22 nautical miles, the bigger ULCC and VLCC can navigate only 2 nautical miles one side that's going in, and another 2 nautical miles with a separation of 5 nautical miles. So it is a very tight corridor. And therefore, even if any ship gets, and if you see on the radar map of the ships, they are stuck on both sides, one in the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Gulf, and one in the Gulf of Oman. So if any ship burns there, it will block this entire thing, which means it has to be pulled out. And for that, a lot of effort will have to be done. Apparently, 20% of the world's global supply goes through it, which is about 20.9 million barrels per day. It has a cascading effect. If this trade doesn't, if the oil doesn't go out, they'll have to stop their production because they can't, continue producing. So that will come to a grinding halt. Attack and tankers, we are aware there are spillages, there is fire, and therefore it goes on for a long time. A bit about how it goes as far as impact on Indian economy. Some of it has already been covered. I think around initially before the war, it was around $60 a barrel or Brent. It's today I think 83, or could be even going south of that. If there is a full blockade, a lot of people feel it will be 100 to 120. And natural gas is also an issue, because I think Qatar Energy has already declared a force majeure, and its supply is also linked to oil. Remittances have been already covered. Trade, shipping is an issue, and insurance is a big backstop to it. That can only happen at that time. So you're looking at the economic, impact of things. The inflation actually picking up. As far as travel and tourism, including aviation, we are seeing that it hasn't resumed. The emergency flights have actually brought people back, but the amount of aviation hub that Dubai has been, Qatar has been, Abu Dhabi has been, I think they're all going to get hit, and consequently, even Indian aviation will get hit. Not only going out, but even the people they were bringing in through these places. Stock markets, we are already seeing that they've gone south. So the question that the chair asked, when you look at the Middle East, the Indian Armed Forces relations have been very good with them. In fact, the very fact that we were doing exercise Milan with a ship of the Iranians, and we had also got, actually, the Americans were also supposed to be there, but they, in the last minute, perhaps didn't choose to participate. But they have been participating earlier. So a number of ships participate in our parade, and that is a reciprocal basis. So we also participated. So that is a good relation with one of the players. Israel has brought in a lot of value add to defense equipment, which we have got from not only which is indigenous, but which is from Russia, France, and even from the US, which we have imported. So that value add is there. As far as the other countries are concerned, broadly, they like to look at the way we actually tackle asymmetric threats. And that is very key to these countries which are very prosperous in the Gulf region. So they learn, or at least try to discuss with us. I'm sure that we'll have to make some difficult choices as we go forward, but we should be able to come out of it. Again, we'll have to rebuild our ties, especially I would see with a country which is likely to suffer a lot of damage, as we are seeing that Iran has. And the final point is, as I understand, starting a war is always easy. But, achieving war aims is a big question mark. One, unless there are boots on ground which do it. Two, if these aims keep shifting, then it's anybody's guess. And then if all of a sudden abruptly you hear that we have achieved the war aims, then nothing can be said actually of it. As far as Iran is concerned, it is fighting an existential battle. It will do anything as long as their stockpiles of missiles and drones are there. That they won't leave. And I think they will go all out. They are not going to back out like this. Are forecasts possible? I don't think so, but if I were to hazard a guess, at least 3 to 4 weeks of conflict is what I would look at. In what shape the Middle East and the rest of the globe will be is difficult to guess. Is there anybody to negotiate with in Iran? I don't think this is the time to look at that. Although people have said, but it's not very easy to see that. As far as India is concerned, we must continue. Our aim should be to build deterrence and prevent wars. And if we were to, like what Dr. Charan said, if we are to attain our goal of Viksit Bharat, we have to actually invest in a lot of defense equipment to at least give ourselves a credible deterrence. But we should try and avoid war as far as possible because it has got too many costs. With that, I end. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant General P.S. Rajeshwar, for very, very useful input security scenario and the possibilities where the war would take further. Now, we are coming to our last speaker for today, Professor Srikanth Kondapalli. Professor, now China immediately condemned the USA and Israel's combined attack on Israel, calling it a serious violation of Iran's sovereignty, and also trampling of the UN Charter and the basic norms of international relations. It also called USA as imperial aggressor. We would see that it is trying to reach out, of course, to the global South opinion, because where India seemed to have hesitated in even kind of condemning any of these things, China seemed to have somewhat, taken the lead. And also, yesterday we heard some news channels mentioning that China has even offered mediation, saying if there is anything China could do to mediate between the warring parties, they would like to do so. Then we are also aware that a couple of years back, China brokered the landmark Saudi Iran rapprochement in 2013, whereas a role like that could have been played by India very easily because of our relations, equally good relations with all concerned parties. So that is one. Then talking about the Iris dinner, the torpedoing of Iris dinner right in our backyard, India's backyard in the Indian Ocean. We have allowed that, and for at least a few hours, there has no reaction at all. Not to talk about anything concrete which India could do, in terms of assistance, in terms of rescue operations. And so, do you think somewhere in this conflict, we have somewhat relegated our space, to China? Should we do something different in the days to come? We know that within the BRICS also there has been some differences earlier in the approaches of India and the other countries. So, of course, both China and India rely on the oil, and as Lieutenant General P.S. Rajesh was mentioning, some of the Russian and Chinese ships were getting preferential treatment while moving through the Strait of Hormuz. So what are our options? What precautions should we take not to kind of give away our ground, to China in this conflict? Go to you, Professor Srikanth Kondapalli.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sayeed, Ambassador Sayeed. I want to thank the EGROW Foundation for inviting me for this. My apologies for not having joined in the initial discussion. So I will try to lay down the China-Iran relations, what that does mean for the conflict currently. Chairman, sir, you asked about whether India has been relegated to the background because of its neutral position, and China has taken the lead in many of those aspects. So my opinion is that I think India played very well in the current standoff. The foreign secretary going to the Iranian embassy to condole Khamenei's passing away, and also the other measures that India had undertaken. On the Iris dinner, it is said that this was invited to the Visakhapatnam maritime exercises, but they have left the Indian waters and close to Gale in Sri Lanka, in the Sri Lankan, actually in the international waters. So I do not think India had the responsibility here, technically, legally, in terms of protecting the Iranian vessel. It is, of course, a sensitive ethical issue that had arisen in terms of the vessel itself. But we are in the midst of a conflict in the situation, and I'm sure there must have been discussions at the track 1 level about these matters. The fact of the matter is it is in the international waters. Second, it has already left Visakhapatnam, and somewhere in February, and several days later, and it was docking in the high seas for permission from the Sri Lankan government. Actually, there are 3 vessels, it seems, not just one vessel. The one vessel was shot down. There are 2 others. One is now docked in Sri Lanka, and the other, we do not know what has happened to the 3rd vessel. So that is the situation on the Sri Lankan. But overall, if the Americans have targeted a vessel close to the Indian waters, I mean, not Indian waters, international waters, but close to India, it can also be done to China in future. So for me, the significance of that is US unilateral policies could also result in the shootout of any vessel close to China. And this is in relation to the Taiwan Straits, South China Sea disputes that we are witnessing. So for me, the larger issue is also about China. And so let me connect that to the China factor. So from a China's perspective, as you mentioned, Ambassador Sayeed, the soon after the strikes by Israel and the US, Foreign Minister Wang Yi called up Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, and both of them said there should be immediate cessation of military operations to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. And then the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman and China's ambassador to the UN, Fu Sung, they made some statements, which includes that Iran's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity must be respected. They also said that the strikes have violated international law. And most important is we need to protect the civilians and adhering to the international humanitarian law. United Nations Security Council met at the request of the French president. And so Foreign Minister Wang Yi's statement was read out, that is, all parties should resume dialogue and negotiations. And this is the only way to resolve the differences. So that was his position. Then the Foreign Minister of China spoke to Mr. Lavrov, the Russian counterpart, and said military strikes without UN Security Council authorization will be undermining the global peace and risk a return to the law of the jungle. The words used was the law of the jungle. So these were the initial comments by the Chinese side. So we can broadly say that China's national interests include stability in West Asia, so that the Chinese energy flows can be uninterrupted. As you all know, China has been importing over 575 million tons of oil, and 52 to 53% from West Asia, and from Iran, quite substantial amount. Despite the sanctions before and also the other agreements that they have signed. So it is mentioned that China imported last year to 2025, 2.6 million barrels per day overall. And out of this 1.8 million barrels per day is from Iran. So quite a substantial amount that was imported. But this is in the renminbi. So there is the advantage for China in terms of the renminbi, the Chinese currency, in terms of these imports. Comparatively, they import about 19% from Russia, about 8 lakh barrels per day, and from Saudi Arabia, around slightly less than that figure. So in other words, China wants to enhance its energy security by importing more from Iran, which is also useful in terms of the local currency being used for the transaction. So that is the energy related. Now, with the Strait of Hormuz being shut down, Foreign Minister spoke to the Iranian Foreign Minister. Wang Yi spoke to Iranian Foreign Minister and asked the Strait of Hormuz to be opened up so that there is regular traffic. Even though China has huge strategic oil reserves, yet the Chinese are now concerned about the impact that it can have. So in the current National People's Congress and CPPCC meeting in Beijing, they have mentioned about 4.5 to 5% growth rate for this year. But for that growth rate to realize, they need to import more oil and gas. Iran also exports LNG, not just Qatar, but also Iran exports a lot of LNG for China. So if they have to maintain this kind of growth rate, they need to import oil, uninterrupted supplies. And so Wang Yi's call to the Iranian foreign minister is understandable on the energy related question. So that is the primary national interest for China. Second is trade. So China West Asia trade is about $480 billion compared to the American trade with West Asia, which is about $200 billion. So China is actually the #1 trading partner for West Asia and North Africa. Chinese investment in West Asia is over $200 billion as part of the Belt and Road Initiative and other projects. The American investments in this area is about $90 billion. So China's is double investment, double trade compared to the United States. So the speculation is that while United States is withdrawing from the West Asian region because they have the shale gas revolution, they have other LNG and oil, etc. So they're not heavily dependent on West Asia for oil. And so the Chinese are now taking up the mantle of the West Asian security situation. In the 19th Communist Party Congress in 2017, that is about 7 or 8 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, the Communist Party of China said that they want to advance towards the center stage, which is basically they want to replace everyone, hegemonic leaders in Asia, including in West Asia. So the Chinese role in West Asia has increased, including in Iran. The chair has mentioned about the Saudi-Iran negotiations on the, this is part of the global security initiative that China made some 3 years ago in POA Forum. So as a part of this, the Chinese are trying to cobble up Shia Sunni and others so that the West Asian security can be more harmonized and as a paving way for the Chinese control of West Asia. So China also has Djibouti naval base, which is not far away from the this region. And they also have huge arms transfer to the West Asian region, including to Iran. So we see that there is so much of arms transfer, primarily to Saudi Arabia and other West Asian countries, but also to Iran. I will come to the military transfers in a while in order to have the flow. So energy, trade, FDI, these are the main aspects, and also the Belt and Road Initiative. So these are the major interests of China. The second major interest is that Iran is a member of SEO and the BRICS now. SEO has focused on multipolarity, which means opposing US unilateral policies, regime change, and structural reforms, and so on, which are called as Washington Consensus, as against the Chinese Beijing Consensus. Now, so as a part of this, they have been able to put across several initiatives in West Asian region. We saw that in Iran, in the conflict on Iran, US unilateral policies, the regime change, all these have happened in terms of those strikes that we witnessed in the last 1 week. So China's position is in terms of this multipolarity. The chair asked whether India is relegated to the background by all these Chinese initiatives. I do not think so, because the Chinese project is to dominate West Asia, while India's project is not to dominate West Asia, including on Iran. So we have taken a different position here. unlike the Chinese who want to dominate West Asia and replace the United States as the regional hegemon, not just in West Asia, but also in other parts of Asia. So that is their game plan. And India doesn't have that kind of a game plan in West Asia. So for that, they have the Beijing consensus. But I would like to suggest that we have Mumbai consensus, sir, and we are implementing the Mumbai consensus. So it is a middle path approach based on negotiations, based on neutrality, and so on. So we have a different approach for West Asia and to Iran, as can be seen in the last 1 week's dynamics from an Indian perspective. The third national interest of China, first is stability in West Asia and Iran. Second is multipolarity. The third is the Chinese are looking for the decline of the United States, both in West Asia as well as in general global and regional orders. So towards that goal, they have promoted several aspects, including with Russia, with other countries in SCO and BRICS. India is not doing that kind of a agenda, sir. So the decline of the United States as the hegemon and replacing the US is the goal of China, as the 19th Communist Party Congress has mentioned in 2017. That is not India's goal, and we are not into that game, replacing the United States. For replacing the United States or nudging the US decline, China has supplied a lot of arms to Iran. And I do not think the Iranians have launched hypersonic glide vehicle strikes on Israel, on Saudi Arabia, on Qatar, on Dubai, on Abu Dhabi, without the Chinese help. And India could not have done this because India's objectives are different from Chinese objectives. China had supplied Wingloong drones, and the Iranian drones that were used in the strikes in West Asia in the last 1 week, the motors, the firepower, the others came from China. Even though these are Iranian in overall makeup, several components came from China. China had promoted the Iranian military industrial capacity long before, not just in this 1 week. And so they contributed to the Iranian strikes, counter strikes. And India could not have done this. But at the end of the day, we will probably see the US also shifting its ire on China because of the kind of assistance they provided to Iran. So that is the third dimension of national interest, which may probably boomerang on China. Because the Trump's policy is also to exert pressure on China through Iran conflict. And this is quite visible, the connection. Fourthly, China's national interests include building a community of shared destiny. We do not know what exactly it means, but for me, I study China for the past 3 decades. My interpretation of that is China wants to create allies and friends in the international order to counter the United States, and Iran is one among them. And even though it is not an official member of the community of shared destiny, Pakistan is, Afghanistan is, all Central Asian republics are, half of the ASEAN are part of the community of shared destiny. China never defined this, but broadly as partnerships. But as it happened in Venezuela, China is not willing to openly side with the countries concerned. And so this is a basic problematic that we are going to see in future. China did supply the Hongqi 9 surface-to-air missile batteries to both Venezuela and to Iran. They have also supplied other electronic warfare equipment and so on. which did not perform well during this conflict, last 1 week of conflict, like it did not perform well in Pakistan. So, in other words, community of shared destiny is the Chinese design for the several regions, including on Iran. So that is where we probably will see the conflict. I wanted to further explain in terms of trade, investments, and so on. There were a number of visits between the two sides. I want to skip all of that discussion. China's investment in Iran is about $450 billion agreed to in 2021, but none of this came about, even though it was some 5 years ago. And their bilateral trade is just about $13 billion in 2024. And some 100 Chinese firms are working in Iran. They constructed the Tehran metro. They also have several investments in the energy projects, but these are not really very spectacular. So the balance sheet is China is promising a lot, but not delivering in Iran. I don't think that would be India's position in Iran. And we have been taking that up as a part of the civilizational kind of package with Iran. So there are huge differences between Indian and Chinese approach to West Asia and the current conflict in Iran. I will take questions instead of elaborating on all of these. Thank you very much, sir, for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Srikanth Kondapalli. Now, all the speakers have spoken, so let me just summarize, the essence of what India should look forward, how India must navigate the evolving Middle East landscape. It should be with strategic prudence, prioritizing its core interests in energy security, diaspora welfare, economic stability, and regional peace. So the ongoing US-Israeli conflict with Iran has accelerated shifts in the alliances, power dynamics, and economic interdependencies, necessitating a recalibration of our foreign policy, and with India holding principles of multi-alignment and non-interference while adapting to emerging realities. So I would outline basically 6 recommended approaches which India could take from my own perspective. So one would be upholding the strategic autonomy and dehyphenated engagement. India should continue its policy of dehyphenating relations with key actors such as Israel, Iran, and the Arab states to avoid entanglement in any binary conflicts. So this may involve maintaining parallel diplomatic channels without favoring one side, as demonstrated by India's balancing voting in the United Nations and its participation in multilateral forums like Shanghai Cooperation Council and so on and so forth. Now, second is prioritizing the diaspora safety and evacuation preparedness. With approximately about 10 million Indian nationals in the Gulf region, the foreign policy must integrate robust mechanisms for their protection, including enhanced consular support and contingency planning for evacuation amid escalating hostilities, which we have proved earlier that India had been very successful in evacuating from war zones, and I'm sure that this would be at the top of priorities of the government. Third would be diversifying our energy sources and secure supply chains. So to safeguard against oil price volatility, which we discussed during the discussions and disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz, India ought to accelerate diversification of energy imports, including increased procurement from Russia, other non-Middle Eastern countries, even United States. So that would, protect our energy security. Simultaneously, advancing projects, connectivity projects, both IMEC and, of course, Chabahar would reduce dependency on conflict-prone pathways and countering, of course, the China's Belt and Road Initiative. The third would be advocating for dialogue and multilateral diplomacy. India should position itself as a proponent of de-escalation through active engagement in international platforms, urging restraint and civilian protection while avoiding public condemnation that could alienate our partners. So high-level dialogues with the US, all stakeholders, the US, Israel, Iran, and the GCC would be essential, on impressing upon them the need, for a peaceful resolution rather than escalating the situation in the Middle East. The fifth one will be enhancing our economic and defense partnerships, forging deeper ties with the stable economies such as the GCC countries through the IMEC, and through Israel and through resilient cooperation and investment flows. We can actually shift the narrative more from the war side to more on the developmental side. Then lastly, I would say that monitoring and mitigating the geopolitical rivalries. In the light of China's growing influence in the region, as aptly brought out by Professor Kondapalli, including its ties with Iran, India must vigilantly access competitive dynamics to protect initiatives like IMSC and its other economic interests. So the diplomatic effort should focus on building coalitions with like-minded partners such as the US, the European nations, to counterbalance adversarial expansions while promoting India's vision of a multipolar order that safeguards its strategic autonomy. So with these, we conclude the core presentations, and we hand over back to the organizers to take a few questions as we are almost nearing our time. Over to you, Dr. Charan Singh.
Thank you very much. We have had, I think, one of the most fabulous discussions on the subject. And I think we have covered everything. As Professor Ashwini Mohapatra mentioned, the economic aspect has not been covered. I'm thinking in 2 to 3 weeks, once the dust settles down, we'll have another one on the economic implications of this war on all of us. There are questions in the chat box. I can read out. One of that is about the Viksit Bharat and its implication on the stability of our country. Matter of great pride, one of the rarest countries which is enjoying financial stability and political stability that we enjoy. I think that needs to be celebrated. The credit needs to go to the current dispensation that despite the global crisis, the country has been reasonably insulated and following its growth chart, the fastest growing economy of the world. Now, if any one of you wants to talk about this, I'm more than happy, Ambassador, whomsoever you think or you want to answer this question. General Rajeshwar mentioned he would not hazard a guess how long this conflict will last. Now, my question to all of you would be, for a country like India, which needs to grow, we need robust export markets. America, with its tariff war, to some extent, has restricted the American market to India. We were exploring the possibilities of going into Middle East, standard that we have been there for many years. As mentioned, 9 million Indians are in that region. So obviously the diaspora is good. Market could be available to us. But now with this conflict, what would you expect? I remember 1991, we had to bring back our people. The remittances just dried off. And to some extent, our exports obviously suffered. In the current scenario, what would be your prediction in terms of stress on the Indian economy due to this war? Ambassador, would you like to take a stab to this?
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Charan Singh. The first, the question which I saw on that about the Viksit Bharat. See, very important thing for India. Of course, India's strategic autonomy and its greater acceptability across the region makes it a very right candidate for mediating between parties for conflicts. Mediating, not in the sense of actually mediating, but at least trying to use our good officers in preventing warlike situations as we see now, and as we had seen a few months earlier or last year, so to say, when Israel actually chose to attack Qatar. So now the country which is most affected by the war this far is perhaps India, other than even the parties themselves, because there are so many Indians which are there, almost 10 million Indians. We are net dependent on energy from the region, and our economy depends on there. So I think when we target ourselves to be the Vishwaguru and to play a critical role to make India as a Viksit Bharat, one of our things should be that our engagement should not be peripheral. Of course, it is good to say that we don't get involved, but at the same time, our involvement should be such that the parties, whichever the party may be, whether it is Israel, whether it is Iran or US, they should first take cognizance of the implications of such a thing on the regional economy. So I think we should keep mentioning about this and doing whatever possible within our means to ensure that the region remains stable. If the region remains stable, then all our aspirations, our economic growth, and everything will fall in place, because these are something which are imponderables. We don't know what is going to happen, as we are seeing that many oil suppliers, gas suppliers like Petronet, LNG, and others have already declared force majeure, and oil prices are rising. So we would not be in a position to focus on our economic development if the region is unstable. So this is one. So I would urge one to, as I said, 6 points I outlined. One, we should continue to play our role, but at the same time, impress upon it that war is not the solution, more emphatically, not just by statements, but also by concrete diplomatic steps which we can take on this. So this is one thing which I can think of. Anything which you would like to add, Professor Kondapalli?
I agree with you, sir, on this, that we need to stabilize the situation and look for those economic growth rates as the main focus. For this, of course, the energy supplies would be most important. The regular energy supplies from this region or from other, as you mentioned, sir, about the Russian oil supplies or other non-West Asia related countries. In order to maintain the momentum for Viksit Bharat, we need to have those stable conditions, and that is necessary. So I stop here. Actually, I have no expertise on the Indian front. My focus is on China.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Hello.
Over to you, Dr.
Very
Chansi.
Yeah. No. I would like to say something, Professor Mohapatra. Am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. I really appreciated your comments, but sometimes this is simply ideals. The ideal environment normally doesn't exist, particularly in contemporary world, because in a world, on the one hand, it is interdependent, economically, digitally, financially, everywhere. So we as a nation cannot exist in isolation. So whatever happens outside, obviously country's growth trajectory, its aspiration, its ambition also get affected. So in that backdrop, my take on this issue is Dixit Bharat is okay, but the greater challenge does emanate from across the border, particularly from the system itself, the global system. It was never so chaotic, unstable. Even during everything at the height of the Cold War, we have a situation now where the rule-based order is practically breaking down. The best example is WTO. Another example at these unilateral tariff campaign by Trump administration. You today we live in a world where each country talks about making my country great again, making my country. It's a basically indicative of the typical robust or say ultranationalism. That is well reflected in the policy itself. Even if President Trump talks about that he is no longer interested in the regime change, so it's an open-ended campaign. But then it is not adhered to. In practice, we see something else. So extremely difficult for us to asked to have the typical balanced approach so far West Asia, the conflict-prone West Asia is concerned. It is easier said than done. It's a huge diplomatic and political challenge to an Indian leadership. Even if we harp on the economic aspect of it, economic gains, economic losses, but how best to extract the maximum from a situation which is perpetually chaotic and which is likely to become more chaotic in the days ahead. Regardless of whether ultimately the existing regime in Tehran persists or ultimately replaced by another one. So that is my take on this issue, because this challenge doesn't disappear. It does exist, and this should be a major challenge so far our ambition of a Viksit Bharat is concerned.
Thank you. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Charan.
I want to thank each one of you, Ambassador, Professor Kondapalli, Professor Ashwini, General Rajeshwar. Our discussion today has not only been pertaining to what has happened in the Middle East, but I think most of us have started thinking in terms of the planet. If you see the statement made by President Trump today, his regime saying, and as reported in the newspapers, the America-India deal would promote the interests of American citizens. How about Indian citizens? Is it a deal? The deal should enhance the welfare of both the citizens. But why should one think only of my citizens? So I think each of us in this country, in other countries, have to now start thinking in terms of the planet. Climate catastrophe, the whole planet is under the weather. And once we start thinking and enhance the level of our thinking on the planetary level, then we are thinking in terms of overall welfare of our planet, rather than enriching one against the other. Professor Ashwini started his presentation by saying, I'm not an economist, but in economics, we have one concept, beggar thy neighbor. This beggar thy neighbor played a very important role in the global wars, world wars, as well as the global trade wars around that time. Each one, if tries to beggar thy neighbor, beggar thy other person in the deal, where do we end up? Do we have a deal? Would we have a deal? Should we have a deal where one person continues to say only the interests of my citizen, and both the countries are democratic? The Indian politicians have to respond to the requirements, demand, expectations of the Indian citizens and voters. So how do you now go about? So I think we need to think as thinkers, think tanks. How do we enhance the quality of the discourse between the politicians and the voters, that it is the planet's welfare that has to be enhanced and not one country against the other? We have experimented enough with beggar thy neighbor. It led to overall decline in the global welfare. It doesn't take us too far. I'm now of the opinion, Professor Kondapalli and Professor Ashwini, where I have drafted a note saying what America is today is not just because of one race or one community. Everybody on the planet has contributed to what America is today. From 1970 onwards, the brain drain, the creamiest of the cream brain of India has gone there to enhance the welfare of America. And we all liked it. Today, what America is because of the best brains from across the world. And because we account for 16% of the world population, I can safely say about 16% of our best brains, or maybe double that, because I remember from IITs, IIMs, the complete batch going to America to serve there. So therefore, I think we all owe responsibility of each other. We have contributed to the welfare of each other. In America's welfare, we all have contributed. So a big brother approach is probably required from America, which accounts for 25% of world GDP, big brother in economics. With that, I want to thank each one of the participants for their questions, which triggered this set of observations from the panelist and the chair. The chair has worked 18 years out of his 34 years of illustrious career in foreign service in the Middle East and brings the richness which was obviously reflected in his opening remarks and in his summary. With that, I would like to now conclude and make two housekeeping announcements. Today's fantastic presentation will be available on our website tomorrow by noon. Next week, we are discussing about Japan's journey from being the fastest growing, highest per capita income in 1970 after crushing atomic bombing of their two cities and rising from the ashes within 25 years to, for all times to come, the decline of Japan's economy. What happened between 1970 to 2025? What was the Louvre Accord and the Plaza Accord? Why did Japan suffer from one lost decade to the second lost decade? Why did Americans and the Europeans come together to see that Japan does not rise beyond a certain level? To discuss all these issues, we'll have Professor from Japan talking to us about the journey of Japan from 1970 to 2025. Timing will be 1 p.m. next Friday. Because of the time zone of Japan, we'll have the discussion from 1 p.m. onwards next Friday. I would welcome each one of you to come and listen to the professor, share your concerns, and enrich the discussion. Have a great weekend. Look forward to meeting you next Friday. Thank you.